The steam-filled shower bay echoed with metallic clatter and half-awake grumbling as trainees finished morning PT. Separate, open-stall partitions lined the far wall, mixed instruction areas meant for personnel cycling through temporary evaluation roles. Arya Locke stepped into the far corner stall, small towel folded neatly over one arm. At 5 feet 1 inch, quiet, and built like someone who spent more time filing reports than running drills, she blended into the tile and steam. Her badge identified her as an administrative trainee observer. Nothing more. Nothing threatening. Which is exactly why they targeted her. 3 male trainees rounded the corner, laughing too loudly for 0600 hours. Big, broad-shouldered, fresh from a week of pseudo-confidence and sweat. They spotted her immediately. "Hey, look," one said, flicking water at her ankle. "Did HQ start letting interns shower with operators?" Another stepped closer, blocking half her stall with an arm braced against the dividing wall. "Careful, sweetheart," he said, smirking. "Wouldn't want you to drown in all this steam. Might need a lifeguard." Water splashed from behind. One of them had kicked the end of her drain line, sending hot runoff across her feet. "Diversity hire," the tallest one muttered. "Bet she can't even lift her own pack." They laughed. Loud. Cruel. Arya didn't react. Not a twitch. Not a word. She simply adjusted the temperature knob, letting their noise slide over her like background static. Silence was a mirror. After all, eventually it showed people their own reflection. But silence also made insecure men brave. The tallest one leaned in, grin twisting. "Come on, sweetheart, shower with us." He dragged a hand along the stall divider. "Learn how real operators clean up." Arya Locke finally lifted her eyes. Not angry, not scared, just calculating. And the 3 men had no idea how badly they'd underestimated the quiet woman in the corner stall. Arya didn't answer their taunts, didn't flinch, didn't even spare them a full glance. She reached for her towel, folded it with the same neat precision she'd used since her earliest deployments. Corners aligned, edges crisp, then stepped calmly out of the stall. No rush, no tension, no acknowledgement of the 3 men still snickering behind her. To them, it looked like retreat. To her, it was data. As she moved to a different stall, she cataloged the trio with clinical clarity. Trainee number 1, loudest. Classic insecurity response. Needed an audience to feel powerful. Depended on laughter to reinforce his identity. Trainee number 2, the shadow. Followed whatever the leader did. No initiative. No backbone. A liability in any fire team. Trainee number 3, dominance addicted. The dangerous one. Watched others for cues, but escalated whenever he sensed weakness. Would crumble under pressure, but take others down with him. She'd seen these archetypes 100 times, on training grounds, in foreign barracks, even in covert units where ego was a more lethal weapon than any rifle. Behind her, the men cackled louder. She's scared. Thought so. Couldn't handle a little heat. They mistook silence for surrender. Amateurs always did. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, slow, measured, carrying the weight of decades. A retired SEAL Master Chief, gray beard, towel slung over one shoulder, stepped into the shower bay. He was just passing through until he saw Arya's posture. Back straight, shoulders loose, no defensive tension, just awareness, the kind only real operators possessed. His eyes sharpened. He knew exactly what she was, exactly who she was. He glanced at the 3 laughing men, then shook his head once, almost pitying them. "Boys," he said quietly, voice gravel and warning. "You picked the wrong one." The laughter died instantly, but the lesson had barely begun. By morning, the 3 men had convinced themselves that the shower incident was already forgotten, buried beneath their own arrogance. They swaggered into the training yard, whispering jokes about the tiny admin girl who ran away, trying to reclaim whatever pride they thought they'd earned. But the moment the obstacle course whistle blew, everything began to unravel. Arya jogged to the starting line at a deliberately sluggish pace. Her strides looked short, underpowered, almost clumsy. Almost. To untrained eyes, she was simply out of her depth. But to Master Chief Dale, watching from the far side of the bleachers, her movements were something else entirely. Controlled breathing, perfect weight distribution, micro-adjustments of foot placement that no beginner could even name. She missed the first vault wall by an inch. On purpose. Let herself stumble, palms scraping dirt, giving the trio behind her fuel. Called it, one of them snorted. Should have stayed in admin. She wouldn't last a day in a real unit. Arya brushed off the dirt and resumed her pace, still slow, still feigning mistakes. Dale's eyes narrowed. He'd seen this before. Operators who ran at half speed so others wouldn't see what they really were. Halfway through the course, trainee number 2 misjudged a rope swing. His boot slipped, ankle twisting violently as gravity yanked him toward the ground. The fall should have shattered bone. But Arya was already there. One silent step, one impossibly fast pivot. Her arm shot out, catching his torso mid-air, redirecting the momentum with surgical precision. He landed safely on his feet, shock freezing him in place. By the time the other men blinked, Arya had stepped away, pretending to adjust her shoelace. What just happened?" he muttered. His friend stared at him, then at her. Dale crossed his arms. A slow, knowing smile crept onto his face. Now the trainees weren't laughing. Now they were watching her, really watching, and the more they saw, the less they understood, and the more terrified they became of the truth they hadn't yet uncovered. The locker room buzzed with post-course adrenaline, boots thudding against tile, showers hissing, trainees bragging loudly to bury the embarrassment Arya had planted in their minds. During the mandatory uniform check, Arya reached into her locker for a fresh training shirt. The corner of the metal door caught her collar, snapping the fabric just enough to tug something loose. A tiny metallic plate hit the floor with a sharp clink. One of the same men who mocked her earlier bent down, expecting a name tag or a badge from admin offices. He picked it up casually, then froze. "What is this?" The others leaned in. A blackened trident, carved deeper than regulation. A pressure gauge emblem behind it. Unmistakable to anyone who'd spent time in naval circles. Rumored, whispered about, feared. The mark of SEAL Unit 013. Pressure Operations Division. A unit so covert it never appeared in written doctrine. A unit disbanded after every operator was listed Kia on a mission no one could speak about. Officially, 013 never survived. Unofficially, rumors had persisted for years. One operator made it out. One operator refused to die. The trainees stared at Arya like she was a ghost wearing human skin. Arya didn't lunge, didn't panic. She simply stepped forward with the same quiet, terrifying composure she'd shown since day one. She took the plate from his trembling hand with 2 fingers. Her voice dropped to a calm, surgical whisper. "You were never cleared to see that." The room went silent. Not a breath, not a footstep. Because suddenly, the 3 men finally understood. They hadn't mocked a trainee. They had mocked a myth. The sirens started low, an uneasy wail that vibrated through the locker room floor. At first, the trainees thought it was another drill. It wasn't. The hallway lights snapped to red. Training staff shouted for everyone to stand fast. Boots thundered as military police swept in, body armor, rifles, and grim precision. Then the door opened, and the entire room locked into silence. The training commander himself entered. Full dress uniform, jaw tight, eyes already fixed on Arya. Behind him trailed the executive officer, senior instructors, and 2 MPs carrying encrypted tablets. The 3 men who had mocked her earlier straightened instinctively, then froze as the commander stopped directly in front of Arya. He didn't scold her. He didn't question her. He didn't even glance at the trainees. He lifted his hand in a crisp, unmistakable salute, the kind reserved for officers far above his own rank. "Lieutenant Commander Locke, my sincere apologies for the breach." The room exploded into whispers. "Lieutenant Commander? Her?" The tiny admin trainee. The commander turned to the stunned trainees and projected his voice across the tiled room. "Listen carefully. This is Lieutenant Commander Arya Locke, United States Navy SEAL, Unit 013, active Tier 0 clearance." Gasps. A dropped water bottle clattered across the floor. Tier 0 was the kind of clearance operators whispered about in bars, but never saw in real life. The commander continued. "Lieutenant Commander Locke has spent the last 2 weeks undercover evaluating discipline, integrity, and threat indicators within this cohort." His eyes laser-focused on the 3 bullies. "And her reports indicate that several trainees have demonstrated conduct unbecoming of the United States military." Their faces drained white. One of them swallowed so hard it echoed. Only now did Arya speak, soft, expression unreadable. "Sir, my findings are ready for submission." The commander nodded. "To all personnel present, Training is suspended until further notice. You will await reassignment pending her evaluation. The realization hit the three men like a physical blow. They hadn't just bullied a trainee. They had assaulted a covert SEAL commander with authority to end their careers before noon. Dawn broke cold and merciless over the shoreline. Perfect conditions for the evolution Arya had planned. The surf thundered as trainees in full gear fought to stay upright, while waves slammed into them like concrete. The three bullies lasted only minutes before the cracks showed. One began shivering uncontrollably. Another panicked every time a wave rolled over his head. The third tried to bluff his way through the pain, until seawater forced his breath out and sent him coughing to his knees. Arya didn't yell, didn't lecture. She simply watched, clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable. The ocean stripped away ego faster than any reprimand ever could. Then her radio crackled. Base ops to shore team. Capsizing fishing vessel 2 miles out. 3 civilians on board. Coast Guard ETA, 20 minutes. The boat didn't have 20 minutes. Arya keyed the mic. Understood. Deploying immediate response. The trainees around her froze. She turned to the three bullies, faces pale, chests heaving, soaked to the bone. You three, she said calmly. This is not a drill. Move. They blinked in disbelief. But ma'am, we're freezing. We're not qualified. Arya stepped closer, voice steady as the tide. Pressure reveals truth. Show me yours. That was it. No threats. No shouting. Just a direct order from a Tier 0 SEAL whose eyes said, I will know who you really are today. They launched into the surf. The waves battered them mercilessly, but something had shifted. They weren't mocking anyone now. They weren't posing. They were fighting, for strangers, for redemption, for themselves. By the time they reached the sinking vessel, adrenaline replaced fear. They coordinated, clumsily but earnestly, pulling civilians aboard, stabilizing them, signaling the rescue helicopter that arrived minutes later. When the last survivor was lifted away, they floated beside the wreckage, exhausted, shaking, alive. Arya stood on the beach watching them return. Not with pride, not with forgiveness, with evaluation. Because anyone can posture in a locker room. Only a few reveal their truth when the world stops pretending. The hallway was silent except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Arya led the three men inside without a word, stopping in front of a long black granite memorial wall, etched with names, dates, and the lives of operators lost long before their time. The trainees shifted uneasily. They knew this place was sacred. Arya stood so still it felt like the entire building paused with her. Unit 013, she began quietly. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried the gravity of a submerged wreck. It was built for missions no one else could survive. High-pressure combat, deep water extractions, suffocation scenarios, captivity conditions most people can't imagine. She touched a name on the wall, 12 rows down. These were my teammates, my brothers, my sisters. The men glanced at each other. None dared speak. Our final mission. She hesitated, breath catching in her chest, rare, raw. We walked into a trap, and I knew something was off. I felt it. I should have spoken up. Her jaw tightened. But I didn't, because I didn't want to challenge my CO. I let silence decide for me. Her hand trembled slightly against the cold stone, and silence cost my team their lives. The room seemed to exhale. The three trainees, men who mocked her, underestimated her, tried to break her, now stood like children facing a truth too heavy for their shoulders. Finally, one spoke. I'm going through a divorce, he admitted. I pretend I'm fine. I'm not. The second swallowed hard. I panic under pressure. I hide it by acting tough. The third stared at the floor. My brother died last year. I joined to make him proud, but I'm drowning. Arya didn't lecture, didn't shame them. She simply stepped back from the wall. You can become better than the men you were yesterday, she said softly. Or you can stay the same. This is your second chance. Don't waste it. For the first time, none of them looked at her with fear, but with respect. The final drill was brutal by design. Tight corridors, smoke simulations, timed hostage retrieval, conflicting intel overlays. A week ago, the three trainees would have collapsed under the pressure. But now, they communicated cleanly, moved with discipline, covered each other without ego. And when the timer buzzed, they weren't panting failures. They were a team. The room fell silent as an admiral stepped in, flanked by MPs and intel officers. His expression was carved from stone. "We have breaking intelligence," he announced. "American journalist. Taken hostage. Hostile territory. Execution window, 72 hours. He turned to Arya. "Lieutenant Commander Locke, you'll lead the extraction. Joint Task Force. Immediate readiness." The three men straightened instinctively. Arya looked at each of them. Calm, steady, unreadable. "If you trust me," she said quietly, "I'll bring you home." And they did. For the first time, they truly did. Weeks later, steam drifted through the locker room again. A new group of young trainees laughed too loudly, mocking a quiet evaluator in the showers, splashing water, testing boundaries they didn't understand. Arya watched from the far end of the corridor, unseen, arms folded. The same mistake, the same arrogance, the same beginning to a story she knew far too well. The cycle always restarted. Her encrypted device buzzed. Unit 013, Operative Lock, Deployment 0430. Objective classified. She reached into her pocket, feeling the cool metal of the forbidden black trident plate. With a practiced motion, she slid it beneath her collar. Hidden again, exactly where ghosts keep their truths. Then she turned toward the exit. Another mission, another night, another silent war only she was trained to fight. And without a sound, Arya Locke walked into the darkness. Pressure built, battle forged, and absolutely unstoppable.